Hello everyone, very good afternoon to all the viewers of The Legal Game. This is Kushagra Goyal, your educator for the CLAT examination. In today's newspaper analysis of December 20, we will be talking about Afghanistan once again in terms of social security and the issues surrounding it. Afghanistan has been at the center of India primarily because there is a threat of security spillover in the country. On December 16, we celebrated the anniversary of the victory of the armed forces in Bangladesh. One of the key triggers for India to take military action against Pakistan was the refugee crisis spillover. Similar thing is now possible in Afghanistan. So, without wasting a lot of time, let's dive into the newspaper analysis. On the front page, the news is related to, let's first, the six nations call for immediate aid to Afghans. Now remember, India, without recognizing the government of Taliban, has continued to extend a people to people assistance or a people to people dialogue. This people to people dialogue is key facet for India to create space for itself in the region. China and Pakistan, which is the major irritant for India, has called India a irritant in Afghanistan. Basically, Pakistan wants to keep Afghanistan as its fiefdom, which is definitely not the case. Taliban also has accepted advanced roles for Indians in the area. What we need to keep in mind then is what has happened. What has transpired is our external affairs minister, exactly a month prior to the chief guest of the Republic Day parade, that is the 5 countries of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz Republic, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan, who are also going to be the chief guests at the Republic Day parade. This is very significant because it will come at the 75th anniversary of our republic. So it shows that India is trying to make amends for its relationship in the region. It wants to increase its foothold in the Central Asian republics. Now, what is this main organization related to Central Asian republics? It is the SCO, or the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. India in 2017 became a member of the SCO, and since then has been a key player or has been trying to carve out a space for itself. Until these countries who were former USSR countries, India had a very close relationship with all of them. But after 1991, there has been a divergence. So since then, India has been trying to create space, and these efforts will be linked to that. Okay, so collectively they have called for immediate aid to Afghans. While India tries to negotiate a agreement with Pakistan of how wheat will be supplied by trucks from India all the way to Afghanistan, which is one of the key aspects that India needs to supply aid for. Okay, so there is broad consensus on regional consensus on issues related to Afghanistan. Now, remember this: formation of a truly representative and inclusive government, combating terrorism and drug trafficking, central role of the UN providing immediate humanitarian assistance for Afghan people and preserving the rights of the women and other national ethnic groups. This is to protect the minorities. These are the key issues for which the world has yet to recognize Afghanistan as a formal state or a formal government. It is because of this that foreign assets of Afghanistan in different banks have also been frozen. Okay, So what all do we need to remember? Which will be the 5 countries that will be the chief guests? They will be Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz Republic, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. Among them, among these countries, Turkmenistan is not a member of the SCO. All the other 4 countries are founding members of the SCO. Okay. So this is a key distinction that needs to be remembered, that Turkmenistan is not a member of SCO. Alright. The 5 foreign ministers had travelled, sending their deputies to Pakistan for organization of Islamic cooperation meeting. This is important because the OIC, which is the Organization of Islamic Countries, that meet, okay, said that Afghanistan will have a collapse if aid is not extended, and the Islamic Development Bank will be covering for the government there. Now, OIC is basically an area where India is never granted a seat. India has been demanding a seat there because as a country we are the second largest in terms of hosting a Muslim population, and yet we are not recognized as a seat of the Organization of Islamic Countries because we are not in Islam. But there are other countries who are not declared Islamic republics but have a seat on that council. The reason why we do not have a seat at the OIC is because of Pakistan, because that will reduce the heft of Pakistan in that area. Now, coming towards this, the other big news is the second sacrilege lynch, or one more lynching in terms of sacrilege or Beadbi. The 10th Guru of Sikhism, that is Guru Gobind Singh, had announced that the Granth Sahib or the book is now the living Guru, that the Guru Granth Sahib is a living Guru. So it is more than a book. It is an embodiment of everything that the Sikhs believe in. Therefore, if anything happens to the book or any action of disrespect is undertaken to the book, the Sikhs believe that the punishment should be much, much higher. In that regard, they have been asking for actions or increase of punishment for actions of sacrilege or Beadbi. But since 2018, that law has been pending with the president. Any laws, whenever, so states and the union government, okay, states can have a law that is distinct from the union. Punishments can be different from that of the union, but the same need to be approved by the union government. That you can have a distinction. This is something that needs to be approved by the president, but since 2018 has been pending. What was this demand? This is the demand for an amendment to section of the IPC, section 295A. 295A is the closest to what we call a blasphemy law. The blasphemy law is where any action that brings disrepute to the religion is denounced and punished. That is something that has not yet happened. Okay, India does not openly declare a blasphemy law, but 295A is closest to it, where if you take any action deliberately to create divisions in religious society or bring disrepute to symbols of religion, then you can be punished with up to 2 years of imprisonment. The Sikh community believe that actions of sacrilege require a much stringent punishment than 2 years. So this is the key issue in regard to this. Then we move on the news related to arrests of Indian fishermen. The Sri Lankan Navy has seized the ships of 55 Indian fishermen for illegal fishing in country's territorial waters. In 1976, India agreed to a treaty for separation of the land and the water territory in between Sri Lanka and India. If an Indian fisherman crosses that border, then the Sri Lankan Navy is liable to punish them, and similarly, the same is done by the Indians. This creates a lot of acrimony between the two fishing communities, primarily because fishing is the livelihood, and any actions that is taken affects the livelihood of the people. Then we move on. Opposition cool to government offer for meet on MP suspension. Twin murders rock politics in Kerala. None of this is important. Then we move. Capital losing its trees to concretization rule violation. This is Delhi NCR's creation of how much a tree's benefit cost, and if you are trying to cut it down, this is the amount of compensation that you need to grant. This is all to prevent damage or loss of tree cover in the city area. Then we move on. STF probe into role of police. None of this is important. Then is the report of increase in desertification of the land. This is key. What is desertification, or what is an area that is a desert? A desert is an area with low vegetation, which has propensity of lower output from land. And because of climate change, there has been a risk of increase of land under deserts. That is ensured to be prevented through the United Nations Convention to combat desertification. This is something that India has also subscribed to. However, the Thar desert that exists on the western part of India is expanding because of land degradation. That land productivity is losing, and we are now, the Thar desert found at Jodhpur, situated near Aravalli Hills, had witnessed slow speed of desertification. It also found vegetation cover and water bodies had increased. So at certain areas it is decreasing, but in certain areas it is increasing. For us, the key convention to be remembered is the United Nations Convention to combat desertification. The other aspect that needs to be remembered is the Aravalli Range. The Aravalli Range in Rajasthan are the oldest mountain range that exists in India. They are the oldest mountain range in India. Because of illegal sand mining, these mountain ranges have been almost becoming negligible or non-existent in areas closer to NCR. The risk the mountains had effectively prevented for the longest time. As long as Earth exists, the Aravallis have existed. That is how old the mountain range is. And because the mountain range are being artificially now removed, instead of the regular wear and tear, these mountains are now, because of lack of them, the increase of desert is happening. So two things to be remembered, that Aravallis are the oldest mountains and the United Nations Convention to combat desertification. Okay, the key counter to this aspect of desertification is to increase the tree cover in the country to 33%. That trees in the country should totally amount to 33%, or the forest cover of the country should be 33%. Only then can we effectively ensure a protection of against desertification. Okay, then we move on to the editorial section. The main editorial written by our former security advisor, reality checks for the opposition unity project. This is political analysis of what is happening between the opposition parties and whether they are capable of fighting the current ruling government. This is political analysis, not at all relevant for us from an exam point of view. Then is on the left hand side. Persist with probe. Fresh report of Pegasus use flag the need to take inquiry to its logical conclusion. What is the fresh allegation? That Rona Wilson, phone, who is accused under the Bhima Koregaon case, her phone, his phone was infected with the Pegasus software and had had multiple attempts of it. Okay, that almost the reports by an international consortium said that 300 out of 50,000 likely targets were Indians, and in terms of this, Rona Wilson's phone has been found to have been a successful victim of the spyware. That the phone was attacked as many as 49 times and was successfully infected by the time he was arrested in 2018 for involvement in Bhima Koregaon case. Now, he had been an active critic of the current Prime Minister, and therefore the fact that he has been in scanner for making up a conspiracy to assassinate the Prime Minister puts into question. Now, one of the only evidence that has been found against him is on his phone. And this, as per reports, is believed that this evidence was planted on his phone. It did not originally exist, but was actually planted on the device. If the evidence on which a person is being convicted is planted or is not really true evidence, then, or the person on whose device it was incapable of even identifying of such content, then holding such people accountable for any crime is a violation of their fundamental rights. This is what the risk is about. So what is this inquiry? Persist with the probe. The probe is the R.V. Ravindran panel that has been established by the Supreme Court. In the Supreme Court, the court had ordered a probe by former judge R.V. Ravindran along with 2 other members. For this, I have already done a detailed video on what the Pegasus judgment is, what is the interim report, and what is the mandate of the committee. Another news is that the Supreme Court has stayed on the inquiry that the West Bengal government was doing into Pegasus. This is because there were 2 parallel inquiries being done. One by the West Bengal government, again by a former Supreme Court judge, that is Justice Madan Lokar. Okay, and then the Supreme Court one, which is also to check into the Pegasus one. So the government had called that there is no need for 2 parallel inquiries into the same scandal. So now these inquiries have been stayed by the Supreme Court. Okay, and now it is persistently important that we inquire or the conclusion of this probe does come to fruit. What is the mandate of the committee? The committee has to identify, first, if Indian devices were infected by Pegasus. Second, did the government do it? And third, if the government did it, it did it under what laws? Those are the 3 aspects that have to be primarily been investigated into by the panel of R.V. Ravindran. Then we move on the left hand side. Age and marriage. Focus must be on creating social awareness about women, reproductive health and rights. The farm laws have taught us that if the general population does not accept something, whatever be the intention of the parliament, it cannot be implemented. No government can actually implement something that has or does not have government approval or acceptance of the people. So here, increase of marriageable age from 18 to 21 is of limited use if the people do not accept it. The second problem is that what are the concerns of the population, of the female population? It is their nutrition and it is their education. Will increase of age going to directly benefit either of them? The editorial states that that is not the case, that this may or may not happen, but it is not true to happen. The government plans to amend all the laws that exist for personal laws, okay, and in this regard, a panel was formed by Samta Party chief Jaya Jaitley last year. This panel submitted its report and suggested, okay, that though the objective looks good, merely raising the age of marriage without creating social awareness and improving access to health is unlikely to benefit the community it wants to serve. That without societal acceptance, there was nothing that was going to happen. What is the status of women in the country as of now? Okay, as per NFHS, 23.3% women were married before the age of 18, which is the high propensity of child marriage. There is already a lot of child marriages that are happening in the country. The fact that despite 18 being the limit, almost 25% of registered marriages are happening below that threshold. So if in this case we increase it to now 21, we are only going to increase the number of culpable people of child marriages. What are we going to do? We are only going to increase culpability without meaningful change. Okay, the editorial states the same aspect, that governments should stop looking for shortcuts to cut the path to social reform. That politicians can claim easy brownie points, that see, I wanted to raise it to 21, which would have benefited the women, which would have created awareness, which would have done this. But will it actually do it on the ground is the question. Unless that is happening, such shortcut gimmicks of laws are not going to really solve the purpose. The most important editorial for us, though, apart from all of this, is Iran testing the red lines of the nuclear talks. This is the JCPOA. This article talks about three aspects. First, the what is happening between Iran and USA. The summary is nobody wants to blink first. That first you take a step, first then I will take. The other side says first you take a step, then I will take. What this actually leads to is the problem that we face in general, that nobody is bulging. Iran wants US to lift sanctions first for it to reduce its nuclear stockpile, whereas on the other hand, the US government wants Iran to stop first for sanctions to be lifted. What the other scene is, while all this is happening, is that Iran is becoming less and less reliant on Western economies and becoming more and more accepted in trade link with Russia and China, who are the other two countries who have continued to violate US sanctions to trade with Iran. So Iran's economy right now may be in doldrums, but Iran is like, all right, I will tide it through as long as I keep getting the support of these two countries. So based on this, and in the middle is the European countries, which is Germany, France, and United Kingdom. They believe, okay, who is Enrique Mora, who is heading the conversation between these countries, okay, he believes that, see, we can get a solution out of it. The talks are really getting a lot done. However, the reality is that as talks resumed after Ibrahim Raisi, as talks resumed about Ibrahim Raisi's ascent to presidency, all the commitment of talks. So in 2021, talks have happened in two stages. So if 2021, we can divide the timeline as prior and post Raisi's takeover. So whatever was agreed prior has been rejected by him and he wants to start afresh. Those demands are not acceptable to US government because, see, US is not losing out anything directly. They are already marginalized in Middle East. Their only close country is Saudi Arabia and Israel. It is their security interest that had pushed Donald Trump to revoke the JCPOA unilaterally in 2018 to extend favors to those two countries. Now Joe Biden is very less inclined to have that kind of relationship, and Joe Biden wants to withdraw more and more of US from these areas. Now the fact that US is in withdrawal and the Chinese, Iranians and Russians know this, that US is less inclined, it is too wounded to actually try and dirty its hands in Iran once again. So for whatever threat they may push of, they will not go beyond the sanctions that they already have, which Iran believes it can tire out. If it can tire out the USA, the risk is of a real nuclear proliferation. That is what the risk is all about. So this editorial is very, very important for all of you. Okay, do give it a read. These are the storylines that are developing. Okay, whatever it may be, the key question remains whether nuclear negotiations in Vienna could become substantive or collapse with no result. No one has the answer to this question yet, but one thing is certain: Iran and US will both fail if they try to corner each other with a Trumpian attitude, that absolute control over the other party, that you will do as I say. That kind of mentality is not going to work. Okay, then we move on. Can India become a technology leader? A strengthened public sector will create more opportunities for the private businesses. What we are moving towards right now is limiting the role of the public sector. The World Inequality Report also highlighted that the case of public sector is reducing, is diminishing, becoming less and less. What we really need to do is not give up everything to private companies. We need, or what NASA is doing in USA, NASA is a public sector undertaking, but it is relying or working along with private sector, where NASA provides the catalyst, creates the technological advancement for such changes to happen, which are then implemented and polished by the private sector. So this nudge follows from public sector to private sector. What India now needs to do, if it has to climb, has to increase the amount of research that it provides. This article points out that, see, look at South Korea and China. India's investment in research and development fell to 0.6 of its GDP, while China invested 2% and South Korea 4.5% of their GDPs. This is the key difference of how Indian economy is working. Over the last decades, our PSUs have mostly been seen as how much profits they generate. If the PSU is not generating enough profits, then it should be sold off, especially with this government, because there is a lot of shortage of money. If the shortage of money, you sell your family silver. So PSUs are basically those family silver that we now need the most. Is everything lost for India? No. We have the highest supply of people from the STEM courses. What is STEM? STEM courses are science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Our proportion is 32.2%, which is the highest among all countries of the world. So if we get our act together, we have the human resources to actually create cutting edge technology which can then be taken to scale by the private sector. Okay. Then on the right hand side, neither ban nor regulate crypto. The government just should say that crypto will never be a financial asset. This is the position of the Congress party, Praveen Chakravarti. He is writing that, see, anything has value as long as the government recognizes it. For example, when Napoleon was the ruler of France, he valued aluminium more than gold and silver. So the prices of aluminium in France and Europe skyrocketed even more than that of gold and aluminium. Now, if the state support for these activities goes away, then once again the value of those assets goes down. So if the government of India declares that India will not regulate cryptocurrency, India will not ban cryptocurrencies, we will just never accept them as a financial transaction. People are investing in cryptocurrencies because they believe this is the future. If this is the future, but we declare that this is not the future we want, people will stop. The moment people stop, the risk of their investment will also come down. And the government doesn't need to get its hands dirty in regulating this market. Because the question is, can we regulate it enough to ensure it is safe? If we cannot do it, then there is no point in regulating it also. Okay, if something is bad and people are willingly doing it, let them do it, but it is not for us. As long as you declare it, their value will come down is the position. Now, I'm not officially discussing this because, or highlighting it as important, because it's a political party stand also. Plus, it doesn't matter because for us, the policy of the Indian government will be the most important one. Then we come blackout in Jammu and Kashmir, army called. Why has been there a blackout? The Indian government plans to privatize the grids in Jammu and Kashmir. The employees of the area or the workers of the grid have unilaterally stated that they will not accept privatization, which has led to strikes. And if there are no workers who will work on the grids, so the army has now been called to put in the hours. Then this analysis is the analysis of mixed record of Supreme Court panels. That will the Pegasus panel of R.B. Ravindran actually be able to do something, or will it not be? This is based on how efficient the panels of Supreme Court have been in the past. Okay, will there be a question about it? Probably no, because all of this is analysis. Okay, then we move on. The Home Minister announced that there will be a training university for cooperation training soon. That how pan-India corporates, cooperative societies, how they should be done or worked around. There will be a university for cooperation. That is what will happen. Okay. He has stated a national level thing. Then priority for bill on voter ID Aadhaar link. The union government plans to link the Aadhaar card with the union with the voter IDs. The voter IDs are given to citizens, Aadhaar is given to residents. Linking this, the government states will allow for decoupling or those who have multiple voter ID cards. The moment you have an Aadhaar and that is linked to your voter ID, if I am one person and I have multiple voter IDs, those voter IDs will become redundant with Aadhaar. But the government has stated this will not be mandatory. There is a risk that if the Aadhaar data is leaked, then there can be a risk of profiling of the voters. Okay, so those risks are what needs to happen. The other two amendments to the law, one includes 4 qualifying dates. अभी तक क्या होता है, January 1 ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर ईयर, अगर आप उस साल की तारीख 1 जनवरी तक 18 के हो गए हो तो आप वोटर कहला सकते हो उस साल के लिए. जैसे कि 2022 जनवरी तक जो भी 18 हो गया है वो 2022 का एलिजिबल वोटर है. अब 2 जनवरी को जो वोटर होगा दैट पर्सन विल हैव टू वेट टिल 2023 टू रजिस्टर हिमसेल्फ. उस प्रॉब्लम को अब एलिमिनेट कर दिया गया है बाय हैविंग 4 क्वालिफाइंग डेट्स, 1 जनवरी, 1 अप्रैल, 1 जुलाई एंड 1 अक्टूबर. Okay, the other is to have gender neutral terms such as spouse instead of wife. That because now we have people who are women who are working, so the benefit there should be extended to the spouse instead of the wife. The word cannot be judged there, so now laws are being made gender neutral. Then the other big news is that the government of India has declared that the nutritional data of children and women should not be made public as it is part of their privacy and national interest. That how many of them are stunted or how many of them have anemia, those that data should not be made public. That it could link or release that you are stunted, you are anemic, all of this. What it would have actually done is reveal the total number to the people at large. This is what is being prevented. Then we move on. Goa never forget its Indianness. This was the Prime Minister speaking at the 60th anniversary of liberation of Goa from the Portuguese. India took 10 years from its independence to finally liberate the Portuguese. The Portuguese had, so India had first peacefully asked the Portuguese to leave. Then we did diplomatic channels by 1955. Till 1957, a judgment from the ICJ came, and then even after the ICJ judgment, the Portuguese decided to stay put. So in 1961, in an operation by the Indian Armed Forces, Goa was liberated from the Portuguese in 1961. So the Prime Minister was speaking about it on that regard. Then on the right hand side, RTI plea seeking SBI report on electoral bonds dismissed. The Indian government and the authorities have consistently maintained the stand that electoral bonds data should not be made public. Kisko kitna mila, which political party got how much, who issued them, who was the major beneficiary, who was the major donor. None of that data has been released by the government. Then we move on to international news. Low turnout for Hong Kong's Patriot polls. The LegCo is the first since China's overhaul of the election system. This, what is the change that was brought in and what is LegCo? Okay, the LegCo had its last elections in 2016 and then it had elections in 2019. The 2019 elections were not recognized and the members of that election were never administered oath. What had China done? China to create the system of one nation, one system. Okay? It ended the rule of equality of democratic votes. Till then, till this new law which was brought in March, the seats of the LegCo were 70. This was increased from 90. However, seats that people can directly elect from were reduced from 35 to 20. And the rest of the 40 will now be chosen by the election committee, which is basically the members of the Communist Party of China. So people, one could only elect a percentage which is 20% of the total, or 20 members in total. Then second thing is that they have no real choice, because even if, let's say, people can choose these 20 members, these 20 members will also be only those who are patriotic as per the Chinese government, because the election committee will also profile who all can stand for these elections. Okay, so this is the key difference about the Hong Kong election. So we need to see what eventually happens before we discuss it at large. Then at OIC, countries vow to seek. This is the meet of OIC that happened in Islamabad in Pakistan. Pakistan has been the one that has been actively trying to get international recognition to Afghanistan. Probably they are due some money. So Taliban is like, once we get recognition, we'll give you the money. Okay. Then in a fierce review or a boomerang moment, Chinese star Peng Shuai has now stated that she never accused Zhang Gulai of sexually harassing her in the past. She is now denying that the Weibo post, which was there for the public for a long time, but then was taken out and then she had disappeared for 2 weeks, was never actually made. That this hue and cry of all women test associations game being cancelled in China, and all the demand for active steps to ensure that no player of China is actually sexually harassed ever by anyone in the country, all of that ruckus had been for no reason, because she now claimed in an interview that nothing had happened to her. She never made such claims, probably because the government is like, either you take a U-turn or something can happen to you or your family. So probably on those lines, two-time Grand Slam winner of 2013 and 2014, Peng Shuai, who is a former world #1 in tennis in the doubles category. Okay. In the doubles category, she is a winner in 2013 and 2015, two Grand Slam wins, French Open and the Wimbledon. Okay. In that regard, she has made this historic U-turn, and needs to be seen what will be the reaction of the international community. Then more protests happened in Sudan even after the prime minister now being restored, that is Abdullah Hamdok. He has been restored after a coup by the military, but now the people are demanding the removal of the military chief himself, that they don't trust him anymore, that no negotiation, no partnership, no legitimacy, that this person, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, who had plotted the coup, successfully done it, but because of protest had to restore Abdullah Hamdok after on November 21's coup. And then now more protests have happened because people were like, now we don't trust you. You are someone who backstabbed us, so we cannot let it happen again. Now this date, that is December 19, has a particular resonance with the Sudanese, because in 2018 the first big protest against the former president had happened on the same date, and Sudan had declared its independence from British colonial rule also on December 19. So it's the historic day on which further protests happened in Sudan. Then we move on to economics, nothing of note here. Then on sports, low on a high as Srikanth finishes with silver, becomes the first Indian male at Worlds to achieve the feat and etch his name in the history books. India's Srikanth became the first men's player after losing the final to win a medal at the Badminton World Championship. These championships, till now only Saina Nehwal and PV Sindhu were the two athletes who had won it. Okay, PV Sindhu had even won in the women's category. Now he came the closest with the silver. Another Indian who was defeated by him in the semi-finals got the bronze medal. So this is India's highest tally at World Championships. Never before had this happened. So the name K. Shrikant has been etched into the history, along with Lakshya Sen, 20-year-old Indian shuttler who lost to Shrikant in the semi-finals and had to settle for a bronze medal. So this is the first time men have won any medal at the Badminton World Championship. Okay, then we move on. The sporting side, nothing apart from this of note. Then on text and context. This is to understand what is the Asian pivot of USA. That US is now moving more and more towards the Asian continent. That it is now looking or trying to steer the continent vis-a-vis China. It sees China as one of its biggest threat for the 21st century and believes that any all hands on the deck kind of approach, that whosoever we may have to help us counter the Chinese, we need them. Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State, is on its maiden Southeast Asia trip. So it needs to be seen what US can actually do. Southeast Asia and South Asia is the fiefdom of China. So the more China tries to dominate the region, if it can be isolated in this area, then its influence can be limited. That is the objective with which US is moving in. Then questioning the impartiality of the election commission. The chief election commissioner Sushil Chandra, along with his two election commissioners, met the prime minister informally for a meeting. Election commission is supposed to be the body that will eventually conduct the elections for the prime minister's position, the Lok Sabha. This is why the election commission is a separate constitutional entity in the Indian constitution, that at no point of time should anyone feel or any political party feel that there is connivance between the election commission and the current government. Okay, so this meeting, which was called by the second and P.K. Mishra, who is the prime minister's principal secretary, he even wrote to the election commission that you are expected to be present. Telling one constitutional authority, telling the other to be expected to be there, is a violation of the principle of impartiality. But have the prime ministers never spoken to election commissioners previously? That is not the case. They have regularly interacted. They are two constitutional bodies, so they need to work together. What is the question mark is what was spoken, why was it not public, what was the way in this spoken, especially the way you are expected to be present is a way that the executive is telling the election commission that we dominate you, we decide who you are, so stay in your place. That is what the criticism is about. Okay, then we move on. No, before we do that, you all need to remember that Article 324 gives the election commission the constitutional authority to actively take steps for free and fair elections in India. On that note, so we move on. Last news is cyber hacking. Nothing of note for us. So on that point, we conclude the newspaper analysis. And if you are looking for dedicated preparation of your examination, then you should subscribe to Unacademy. Unacademy's platform is where you can not only watch classes but participate in them. How can you do that? In these classes, you can raise your hand to talk to the teacher directly, ask your question, and the notes of these classes are immediately available. In terms of if you take a plus subscription, not only do you get those classes benefit, but you also get access to national and sectional mock tests. And if you are looking for a plus subscription, you all should subscribe to a 6-month subscription for CLAT 2022 aspirants, and CLAT 2023 aspirants should take a 12-month subscription. You can use my code KUSHGK for an additional 10% discount on your total subscriptions. We are also conducting on this Saturday the Unacademy Law Aptitude Test, which is a half test for your, and the weekly T20 tests which is on a daily basis, a 20-minute short test. There are 4 new batches coming up. The first is for CLAT 2024 aspirants, which begins on January the 5th. Then there is a batch for the DU students who have already completed BA and are then looking for LLB preparation, a 3-month course for all of you known as the DU Dream. Then for CLAT 2023 aspirants, the batch begins on December 24th, and then Emerge batch, which begins on December 2022 for CLAT 2022 aspirants. This is a 6-month batch. For those who are giving the exam this year, you should definitely subscribe to this. On that note, thank you so much. If you like this newspaper analysis, please give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, do remember to subscribe. Thank you so much. See you all in the next one.